With so many games releasing in the first quarter of 2024, I believe there is room for bite-sized adventures that offer the chance to actually finish a game in a reasonable amount of time. As I get older, I find myself more and more addicted to indie titles, if only to experience unique gameplay systems that I don't find from larger developers. Further, I enjoy the fact that I can actually finish these games without having to dedicate multiple weeks just to complete a few chapters. Anomaly Agent from developer Few Games delivers a fast-paced and well-rounded sci-fi narrative paired with platforming action that never grows dull across its 6-hour runtime. Anomaly Agent puts players in the role of Agent 70, who's tasked with putting a stop to strange anomalies that threaten the world. For instance, as anomalies are dealt with, there are lingering effects, such as your captain growing or shrinking as the balance of the universe shifts. Agent 70 travels through portals to areas that have been infiltrated by enemy clones and powerful anomalies, which does require his smooth skills and quick wits to get through. The narrative is far better than I initially expected, as it delivers some quality sci-fi interactions with a dash of dark humor. During dialogue, players can also make choices that affect some aspects of the experience. For instance, saying nice things gives you positive points, which could lead to health increases, but saying the wrong things leads to negative points, which actually gives you more coins eventually for further upgrades. It's not tough to figure out which answers do what, so it's good to answer to play into whatever strategy you're going for. There are a few twists found throughout the campaign as you meet new characters who know more than they let on, but I will say a second playthrough might help for really understanding the themes, given the sci-fi elements are kinda tough to keep up with in the early stages. The gameplay is broken up into levels that incorporate platforming and combat. The platforming sections are fairly straightforward and never too difficult. In fact, the entire game on the default difficulty is pretty approachable, but many of these platforming sections are skill-based. Throughout the campaign, Agent 70 will gain new abilities that lend to combat but also open up new means of traversal. Specific features like utilizing portals to get across gaps, paired with the double jump or slide to get past electricity, are pretty common, but they become a bit more involved in the later chapters. The design of this game expertly introduces you to these environmental hazards so you can know how to use them against enemies. It creates a harmonious connection between the platforming areas and the combat sections. Combat requires a bit more skill, but the systems aren't overtly technical. I would probably say that the speed of combat is swift but not flashy. You're expected to time dodges and parries during every encounter unless you want to take damage. However, as you acquire more abilities, you can combo into other attacks that can stun enemies, but these also have short cooldowns tied to them. I was pretty impressed by the depth of these abilities and how the developers time their introductions. Each new ability becomes a proper extension of your attacks, and by the end of the adventure, I felt like I was untouchable. Sure, encounters can be pretty difficult, but the developers were nice enough to refill your health at each screen and set up checkpoints so any player can likely see the credits if they wanted to. Boss battles have multiple phases and require an understanding of the enemy telegraphs. I'll admit I died a few times on every boss, but I don't find them explicitly challenging. Sadly, I attribute my deaths to just being bored of some of the boss encounters. Many of the early bosses seem to just play the same, as you simply have to dodge away from their attacks, and it does become a little dull because you're just doing the same actions for the entirety of the fight. As awesome as the boss designs are, I felt like the combat systems don't lend themselves well to the one-on-one encounters, which is why other enemies are sometimes summoned during these fights to at least keep you on your toes. Regardless, the end bosses are exceptionally well designed, so it does get better. That said, the normal enemies have a pretty cool system. The game starts you with simple robot clones before introducing more powerful ones. However, as the enemies group up, they can combine to create an even stronger clone. This means during fights you have to pay attention to crowd control, or else the fights just become way more challenging. Thankfully, there are other weapons in the game, and aside from a melee bat, you'll pick up guns that you can then upgrade with poison bullets and more ammo. Having a gun doesn't make you any more powerful though, but it's a great way to interrupt enemy attacks or cause a bit of chip damage as you close the gap. I ended up finding the environments and general traversal to be one of the highlights of the entire experience. This, paired with the dark humor narrative and some unique combat mechanics, allows this little indie gem to stand out. It's one of those games that you want to replay just to show off the combat skills that you've gained along the way, and thankfully there is New Game Plus that offers the chance to really see the depth of these mechanics. If I was to nitpick, I would say that the upgrade system was a bit too straightforward, and I felt like it didn't really encourage diversity between runs since you'll likely unlock everything in order, even though you can technically skip some upgrades if you want. Anomaly Agent is a true indie gem that is perfect for a weekend game. It has a unique combat system that takes some getting used to, but you'll want to stick with it because it's just so damn fun to master. The developers showcase some excellent pacing as they balance combat, platforming, and narrative with absolute grace. While the boss battles could have used a bit more flair and the upgrade tree could have encouraged more diverse loadouts, these points are easy to overlook when you're just having a good time. Noisy Pixel is giving Anomaly Agent a 7 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth, and subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.